Raising Your Collaborative Intelligence with Reggie McNeal, that webinar drew, man, so many questions. I didn't think, wow, and they're good questions too.
Yeah, they should have done this thing themselves. They had the right questions.
Well, they're great questions, and so we're going to just do a session with some of the questions, and you and I have kind of looked over them, and the first bucket of questions is kind of, how do you make the shift to a collaborative environment?
You know, this is a culture shift. It's not a simple fad. It's not a tweak. If you move into a collaborative culture, you literally have to do the stuff that shifts culture. And what I tell folks, if they want to shift a culture, whether it's to move from a church-centric to a kingdom-centric, church narrative, or in this case, a leadership style, you have to change your language, what you talk about, how you talk about it. In the case of collaboration, there's a lot more we instead of I. Our instead of my, and how you actually bring up stuff for folks to talk about. So the language and how you talk about it. The scorecard, absolutely critical. And if you don't change the scorecard, you don't shift a culture.
And by scorecard, you mean what gets measured is what we do.
And what gets celebrated too, so that in the old maybe command and control structure, the Lone Ranger decision maker, the tablet maker, the great decision, the hero, or whoever made this the great judgment call. Those scorecards have to give way to, boy, did we make a great decision as a team. You begin to celebrate team kinds of decisions. You begin to celebrate inputs, not just decisions. You have to celebrate the progress. And I know that feels awfully cumbersome initially because you're just used to getting input and going away and making a decision. But if you don't celebrate that the team all had skin in the game and they brought their best to it, then it'll never change. And then
and we've got good models of that. I mean, Jesus himself could have done anything he wanted, and yet he says to his apostles, "Hey, you feed them. You figure it out."
Yeah. Well, and then too, a lot of folks mistake collaboration for cooperation or coordination, or as you said on the webinar, if you treat your leadership, if you're the senior leader, or even the leader of a team, and you just view your team as people to give you advice.
Advisory.
And then you go and into your prayer closet or wherever it is you go to make decisions, and then you announce and it's promulgated. And that's not true collaboration. And so that wouldn't be celebrated in a collaborative culture. That would actually be called out. Although not every decision has to be done collaboratively. I mean, if the building's on fire or there's a tough personnel decision or something like that. But I'm talking about the kinds of things that yield that make themselves more amenable to those kind of project management and strategic direction. Where are we going over the next 12 months, even tactical kinds of decisions.
Well, let's tackle it from two perspectives.
But okay. There is one more thing, though,
sure.
if you don't mind, that I need to say, because there are three things. You have to change the language, the scorecard, but leadership, which is what we're talking about. You have to shift the leadership behavior, and that's the hardest one. Several of the questions, a bunch of the questions actually were something like, how do I bring my senior leader on board? How do I get them to the table? Truth of the matter is, if they don't come to this table, you're going to have a very difficult time because it's more than a tweak on how meetings are run. This is a value shift, and so honestly, I don't know what to say to folks. That if their senior leader doesn't buy in, they're going to have a really difficult time. But even if they do, it takes practice at being collaborative because that's not how we've been trained. And I know I interrupted you.
No. I was going exactly there. In the book Teams That Thrive, Ryan Hartwick and me, and me as Warren Bird, we highlight ways that if you're not the leader, you can begin to invite collaborative attitudes and values, even if you're not the leader, such as by asking questions.
Right.
At the meeting, say, hey, sometime could we talk about what works well in our meetings and what we might do to improve in our meetings. Yeah. And that not only is a collaborative process of giving feedback, but that could very well lead to greater collaboration.
Well, and the leader, like I say, if it's a team leader, if you're the senior leader of a pastoral staff or whatever, what's critical is that this communication not be artificial. Like I'm acting this way, but I'm still going to behave the old way. You know, this is all play acting, and we're just dusting a little bit of language over it, or taking a little longer to get information.
I'm going to polish my listening skills,
Yeah,
but I'm really going to
really
go off
still
and-
going to make my own decisions.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's very difficult because we were trained as spiritual leaders to persuade, to inspire, to, you know, not necessarily to collaborate. It's a different deal, but we can learn. We can be coached into it. It's something that, even though it's not natural, you can learn to do it. And so it's just an important commitment to make.
So let's put those three together and land this section of questions. There's got to be changes in
Language, how you talk, what you talk about. Yeah. Scorecard, what you celebrate, what gets measured and what gets celebrated.
and
then
most important.
leadership behavior has to change.
Great.